I'm Krishnan Sangameshwaran, and I'm a product guy here at the F Word, and as well as the co-host of The Word in Fashion. This is a podcast, and the objective here is really to get different perspectives in the fashion and apparel space, right? And we are delighted to have you. And as I said, this is probably the most interesting conversation I'm going to have this morning and probably all week, to be quite honest with you. So, looking forward to this. And
Awesome.
great to
Thank
have
you,
you on.
Krishnan. I am excited to join you guys in talking about fashion and just talking about the industry in general and talking about what we're all doing here and how we're trying to push it forward.
Amazing. Tirsa, I am Akanksha. I'm in product marketing at the effort, and I also manage community and the agentic marketing side of things. It's very refreshing to have you on this podcast, and we've been looking forward to this conversation, I think, all week. So, can you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'm Tirsa Parrish. I'm co-founder of Fashion Index, which is an online platform really started to help bring the community of fashion together and start meshing the community for those small to mid-sized businesses. Because in today's environment of SEO, as I have been in the industry for 30 years, have produced and made tons and tons of product, working in corporations that are really large as really small. What I realized when I actually went into the more of a consulting phase is things are really not only disconnected and difficult, but people don't know where to find things in that disconnected world. Today, now everybody is doing those search engines and using them to try to find things. And search engines are not made for small to mid-sized businesses. They're made for the largest answer out there, the most likely response, which makes it really difficult for a small business to find another small business. It makes it really, really difficult to articulate all of those different things because maybe the right business doesn't really have a great website, but it doesn't really speak to their expertise because what they're spending time doing is making product. And so you get this disproportionate misunderstanding of what the businesses are. And so we really wanted to build a network that could allow businesses in a very simplistic way of listing themselves, of highlighting their best features, and anything that they do have as far as a digital presence, that we could highlight those things, share them, and then help them improve those newsworthy features. And coming from our perspective, particularly when we do like live conversations with business owners and things, we can really get a sense of who they are and what type of business they run. And we can do that because both myself and my business partner have had over 30 years of experience in the industry. We both are educated in design and merchandising, and we both carry that knowledge forward in a design forward business for an extended period of time. We've been around the world in manufacturing facilities. We've negotiated pricing and had to deal with delivery issues or sourcing issues. With that, it gives us the ability to speak to all of those business owners, regardless if they're in the creative part of it where they're trying to sell their experience of being a designer and designing for somebody who maybe has a really great idea but doesn't know how to design. Or it could be somebody who's a sample maker, or anybody in that chain of who is your peer in a business setting. All of those businesses, as well as manufacturers of materials, ones that are manufacturing actually garments or the subcomponents of garments, be it like embroideries, screen prints, all the way through the process of I need a 3PL warehouse because I don't need a dedicated warehouse these days, through software solutions. And that's where you guys really come into play, right? And so all those sorts of businesses can be listed on Fashion Index, can become part of a community. And because that community is getting stronger, your general SEO gets stronger. But in addition to that, what we really found is we need to meet people where they are today. So it's great if you send a text message to a teenager, but if they never check the text messages, they didn't get the message. Maybe they use Discord. Maybe they use something different. Maybe they're only on TikTok. So you need to be where your client base is. And so everybody, particularly younger generations, which are part of your client base these days, are on social media. And so you really need to be present on social media, be it your LinkedIn because that's where your professional setting is, or Instagram, TikTok, and all of the other platforms.
That's really interesting, Tirsa. Sorry, go ahead.
That's amazing. Yeah, just to follow up with what you were saying, Tirsa. What I gather from that, from everything you said, is it's a complex. It seems like a complex, intricate web of multiple different. How should I put it? Players or entities that offer something on the table, right? That have a specific skill set, right? Which could be like a company that just offers very specific materials, or somebody that does design services, or maybe a brand that actually wants to get something manufactured. It seems like there's this world is quite fragmented, in many ways, and a lot of people with a lot of skills, and getting them together, I think there is something to be unlocked there, right? How do you find the person that you're looking for, right? And putting that together is a hard job, right? To get that supply chain going, or the value chain, if I may.
Yeah, well, so if you really think about it, and if you know a lot about the industry, people are like, oh, it's just networking. It's just networking. It's much more than just networking. It's really more like a neural network that you need to really have in the industry. Because when you look at product types, you look at the products that we're wearing ourselves today. We have a sweater, which is one type of machine. We have knits, which is a totally different type of machine. We have wovens, totally different types of machines, both that are making the material as well as who are making the garments themselves. And so, when you get into different product types, you really need to have a network that's much richer than just a factory. You can't just go into a factory and think a factory can make all product types. They might tell you they can because they want the business, but is
Yes.
that what their strength is? Is that what the machines are actually set up for? Is it the type of machines that they actually have? And so you
Right.
really have to start thinking about what type of product you want. And then you have to build from there. And then you think about the regions that you want to be in, because, regions are more and more important these days. And you're like, okay, well, who's out there? And all of these businesses, like I'm saying, they're busy doing their work and they don't necessarily have a huge web presence. And so you're trying to find these businesses that are perfect for you, but where do you find them? And that's kind of where we stepped in to try to fill the gap.
I mean, that's amazing. And just help me understand, now that you've found two or three of these people, how do you get them to work together? I still think that there is a world where you have to tell your factory, okay, you got this, but then now I want you to talk to that guy who I found sitting in Peru, who can supply you with ABC, and then that other person here who can supply you with XYZ, right? You still have to orchestrate. I would think.
So
Is that how it?
yeah, so there's different ways of going about it. So you can definitely go and do all of the sourcing yourself, and then say, please go to this place, or please go to that place, or please go to this place. But if you're a small to mid-sized business, one of the things you don't have is a lot of leverage. And you don't necessarily, because you don't have a lot of volume and history with necessarily these companies. And so some of the strength comes in knowing when to let somebody else do some of the work for you, because they have a relationship with somebody. And so if you find a business partner that can be a vertical business partner for you, meaning that they can make the sample for you, they can do the manufacturing for you, but they can also do some of the sourcing for the trims for you, then that's
Right.
really a strength in a lot of ways, because they already have payment set up with that supplier, right? They don't have to go through getting approved for payment. They don't have to go through approval of quantities, because maybe they're running larger numbers for another business. And so the business that you're giving them is small, but they'll be able to get their supply chain to work with your numbers because of their relationship that they already have with them. And so like, okay, well, sure, we'll run the smaller quantity to support the relationship that I have with this manufacturer. And thereby you're benefiting from them. So it's not always to your advantage to find all the things. You can definitely say, I want something like this. And then please come back to me and find what you can supply. And if it's not right, then you can say, no, I want you to go ahead and order from that supplier. And I understand that, it may add some complication to it, but at least you've gone through the effort of the conversation. What is going to work best for this situation? And so sometimes you can come in and say, yes, I want to introduce you to these suppliers. My business partner loves to tell a story about her when she was working in denim. And she had a supplier that she always worked with for this certain product type. And so she was working with them, and this business was like, oh, okay, sure, send me your supplier. And they messaged back and said, oh my gosh, they are not only in my city, my building, but they're on my floor. And I've never met this business before. And so there's plenty of relationships where you can introduce to people who are right around the corner that they didn't know were there. That strengthens both of your networks, but you have to be open to possibilities of who you're working with. Now, if you're trying to work with zippers and you're like, no, I don't want anybody but YKK, then you say, no, I don't want anybody but YKK because they're known as industry leaders. Like, you definitely have those abilities to say, no, I need this specifically because of the level of product.
That's interesting. Tessa, from what you say, I understand that you've seen every corner of the industry, right? From production to supply chain to strategy. And then, of course, you co-founded Fashion Index, a centralized hub. Was there a specific pain point that ultimately pushed you toward building Fashion Index?
Well, ironically, so we started this conversation and we started the business in 2019. But when everything shut down during the initial COVID and people could no longer count on their current supply chains, right? Nothing was coming from overseas. No matter where you were located, nothing was moving. And as soon as there was an incident, things would stop again. Well, that created this mess of web that took years to kind of untangle. But in that beginning stage, the people were most critically concerned about were the PPE products. And so all of a sudden, our phones were blowing up and people were saying, help me, help everyone else. I want to make product, but I don't know where to get these things. Some of them were in industry, some of them are out of industry. A lot of do-gooders were just at home sewing PPEs for people and getting them to the local frontline workers, right? And we said, holy crap, we have to help. We have to do something. And so we try to fast pace and bring it forward because we're like, people need this now. We can't wait. And we built a very custom platform. So it didn't happen overnight because we knew in the end, if we built it some other way, we would have had to rebuild it. And so we go through the pain in the beginning and then be set up for success long haul. But that was really okay, we need to do this now. Like, it was so obvious that people were struggling and that there were options out there, but people being able to find who had materials available was very tough. And then to link them up, right? It wasn't just one material, it was multiple materials that you were looking to put together.
That's such a fascinating and impactful sort of origin story right there, Tirsa. That's amazing.
And it sounds like every designer's story, to be honest. COVID was a really challenging time, but even now, most designers feel lost once they enter the industry, right? And it's not really an easy place to be in. And I think platforms like this are really needed to guide them to their first steps.
Well, I think you will find, and probably you both agree, that the industry is archaic in so many ways. And the way that big businesses operate in the fashion industry, I'm not talking about industry as a total, but in the fashion industry is astoundingly archaic. Like, years ago, I worked for the Gap Corporation and we ran the whole thing off of Excel. That was all we had for reporting. That's all we had for analysis. It was report after report. So we're essentially running this major retailer off of Excel, which is a $100 program. Kind of crazy to think about. And now, why would they do that? It's because they're so entrenched in what they're doing. They are afraid to take the time to implement something else. Maybe that's it. Maybe they're like, this is working, so why change? I don't know what the reasoning was, but I do know that if we could have had more analysis, like, what would have been the outcome? Would they have gone through some of the struggles that they went through because they would have seen things coming faster? We're doing really successful, but then there were lots of things that happened to them where they were just like, whoa, I kind of got lost and I have to like refine my footing, right? Big businesses today are trying to manipulate, but it's like moving a cruise ship. It can't make the same turn a really little car can, right? It doesn't have that power to pivot. And so today, a lot of small to mid-sized businesses that are newer to the industry, who are coming into it from a different angle, are being very successful because they're not looking at how it's always been done. They're more open to some of the newer technology and some of the newer ways of trying to be successful here, particularly when you're thinking of online retailers. And there's some really young people coming into the industry who are doing an amazing job because they're doing it differently. And so, like, is the way
Yes.
we've always done it the best? Maybe, but
So
there's also other ways.
right. And would you say now that really there is this, and I think you're highlighting this idea of like direct to consumer and a lot of the direct to consumer brands that have popped up, small and medium size. Do you think now that there's a lot more richness in that layer, that consolidation has kind of given way? So it's not just these 3 or 4 large companies that are sort of running the show, but there's a lot more space for these independents in the way things are today. Do you see a lot more of that transition happening? Is it fair to say, or what's your general take on the landscape? You did highlight.
The landscape truly is the customer has changed, and the brands that are actually adapting with the customer are the ones that are being most successful. So the customer wants more from the brands. They want more of a relationship with them. They want more understanding of what they're about. They want more personalization, if you will. And smaller brands are telling a better story more authentically. So larger ones are going after what they think they want rather than who they are. So being who you are as a brand really speaks to the consumer. When it resonates, they become not only a fan, but a forever fan, if you will. Like, once you build that rapport with them, it's there. Even if they're not shopping every day with you, they're still like, oh, but I love that brand and I'm going to keep going back. And so that relationship is really what brands need to consider these days. And some large ones are being relatively successful, but a lot of smaller ones are being much more successful. Consumers really do want sustainability. Numbers have shown they're not ready to pay for it yet, which is a whole different conversation, but they do want it. They want to do right. They're not sure how authentic sustainable claims are these days. And so they're a little bit leery, but they want it. They want to do better in general, no matter which generation you are. And so how do we work with the consumer who wants more an authentic relationship with you, that wants to be more sustainable, that we can articulate the information to the consumer in a clear, concise way that really speaks to who we are? And so that's kind of what people are kind of struggling with these days. And for larger companies, and smaller companies, they really need to think about the future proofing of that. This is a thought of, we need to plan for not today. We need to plan for tomorrow's tomorrow, which is a hard thing to conceptualize when you're trying to figure out how to make it through today. But this goes back to if you don't have your 3 and 5 year planning, you're really missing out, because you need to plan in order to be successful. And when we look farther out, there's actually, the Textile Exchange has said that there's going to be a huge shortage of sustainable materials for our industry by 2030 if we don't start working towards it, aggressively working toward commitment of, yes, I'm going to support the businesses who are making sustainable materials. And so the ones that are forming those relationships won't have the concerns of businesses who just think it will be there when they want it, because it won't. It does not happen overnight. Machinery needs to be built. Whole factories need to be built. Networks need to be connected. If you want to do textiles and textile recycling, there's a lot of steps and processes that are not currently in place. And so these things do take time, but they also take investment. And so that investment really needs to happen. And so as an industry, we need to really start working towards that. And that future proofing is what people need to work towards. And what do I mean by future proofing? That means looking at your margins today, starting to put in true sustainability in there, not because it's a buzzword, not because your product happens to be sustainable, but you're purposely making it sustainable with a circularity to it. Like, what happens to it after that first consumer is done? Is it recyclable, really recyclable? And is there a recycling system? Is it something that can go into a secondhand market space? Like what happens to it? Is it something that would be fantastic to be upcycled into something else? And so, like, what is that in our industry? What I just was reading about a company who recycles chopsticks, right? And uses that wood pulp, right? And so there's lots of different industries that are looking at this, not just the apparel industry, but how do we get to that future proofing? How do we become part of it so that we're part of the solution and that we're prepared for the future? And so it's taking that cost of sustainability, taking it out of today's margins and putting it in your overhead of your future proofing and future planning. And once you start doing that, then all of a sudden you become more viable for the future because you're really planning for how you're going to succeed tomorrow.
So, Tirsa, help me understand, what do we really mean by sustainable? You spoke about this interesting data point. By 2030, we are going to be out of sustainable material,
Yes.
right? What does that really mean? Help us understand.
There will be so much more demand in 5 years for sustainable material. There'll be more demand than there will be materials available. That's what that means. There are
right.
sustainable
Okay.
materials today, but when you look at the anticipated trajectory of sustainable materials, it's a steep incline of demand and resources won't be able to keep up with it. And so there'll be a short gap of what people want and what's available.
That's a massive opportunity right there for companies, brands, and designers, right, in the industry.
Right. Yeah. And, really paying attention to that and what's going on makes a lot of difference, and there's so many businesses are doing so many great things. I don't want to diminish that people are fully invested, regardless of how governments are leaning today. Individuals and businesses really are still moving this needle forward, maybe not as successfully as they would with governmental support, but there are lots of regulations in Europe, for example, that are going into place that are going to demand that sustainability and are going to demand it in a much bigger way, which is why the demand keeps going up. They are doing these great things, but they need more support. They need more ability to keep the momentum going, and they need that connection. I don't know, like, what was it, 2 months ago? I went to Climate Week in New York City, had really great conversations with people, was part of really great talks with thought leaders. When I came away from it, people were like, how was Climate Week? And I said, it was my first Climate Week, full confession, and I was super excited to be there. I was kicking myself before for not going, which is why I said, I don't care, I'm going. I really felt like people were just getting down to work. And then I was talking to one of the people afterwards, and they said years before it was photo opportunities and to be seen at Climate Week. This year it really felt like people were there to get to work. And so I said, well, that's exactly what my feeling was. People were really just problem solving and doing. They didn't care about the soundbite necessarily or the photo op. They wanted to connect and they wanted to figure things out and they wanted to share what they had figured out so that others could join that thought process. So people are trying to get things done as a global community. And so when I look at, people talking about nearshoring, but the numbers don't support it yet. But then I talk to people who are in the places that people would be nearshoring to. They are having the meetings. They are having people come to them. It just hasn't happened yet. It is happening, but it's also part of the discussion is, okay, is it costing me more? And looking at your total cost much different than you were before. It's not just today's margins. It's the total cost of doing business. What is it? How does it impact, like, how I can talk to this and market it? How does it resonate with my customer? How does all of this, how to play into it to read what is my true cost? What is my true cost of doing things in this place versus this place, doing them this way versus this way? If I do it farther away, I have to have longer lead time, which means I have more opportunity to miss what the customer actually wants because I'm farther away from the customer receiving the product. I might order more quantities than my customer needs. So now I have to deal with extra inventory in my warehouse, and I have to deal with markdowns, and I have to deal with potential brand dilution, depending on where I use as an outlet for all of that, versus ordering what my customer wants when they want it, having it there, having minimum markdowns, having minimal extra inventory to handle. There's a lot of different things to look at, both internal staff, external, and all of that plays into what your true cost is.
So there's a lot of benefits there from nearshoring. I think that's really what you're pointing out, right,
A lot
Tirsa?
of that.
And, I'm very curious, right? Because I think that we are the last many months, there's this talk of ifs and so on and so forth, as well as, so I'm very curious to understand, do you see anything in your data on the platform where you see a lot more of that activity here in North America, where there's a lot more either chatter or communication happening through the platform that
There's
ties into the
definitely a
story?
lot more conversation in general that's happening in the industry of saying, what are my opportunities? What are my options? I'm not sure that my current sourcing strategy is the right strategy. And so there's a lot of people looking for a revised strategy and trying to figure it out for sure, because things, you know, really have gone into a bowl and been tossed up in the air, and people need to figure out what's the right thing today, not what was right yesterday, right? And so there
Yes.
is a lot of sourcing happening around the globe. People are looking at all the different options and trying to figure out what they can afford and what is right for their business model. So there's just in general a lot more happening in the space. So now is a good time to be in this space as far as having your presence and being able to share who you are as a viable option. And speed to market has become more and more important in the industry as fast fashion has played into the industry. How do we look at fast fashion, and do we need to compete with it? And if we do, how do we do that? And a lot of it's just about how we do things more efficiently internally in order to expedite what we're trying to put forward. It's not necessarily about, I need to make that cheap product, but I
Yes,
need
I
to
see.
be nimble enough to adjust to the consumer and as accurate as I can in the decision making that I'm making, and bringing forward the product that the customer is really interested in when they're interested in. Seasonality is definitely going away in many regards, right? And so seasonality is going away. So when you think of that, like that means that how I order product is much different. I'm more likely to order multiple small orders than to order mass orders and planning a sell through. It's different way of thinking about the business. And part of what you guys are doing, right, is problem solving that time factor too, doing things
Exactly.
faster, doing things, hopefully the iterations faster and hopefully better, but helping people to see different things as quickly as they can and being able to make decisions as a community, right? So the industry's always been, I need to touch something, I need to feel something, because technology wasn't advanced enough to help them get past that. Ultimately, should you see it and touch it? Probably, because it's going to look really cute on somebody digitally, but you want to make sure that the fabric weight is the right weight, right? It really does what you want it to do. I want it to kind of hide some of the imperfections without feeling heavy, for example. A lightweight knit is going to show everything. And so you have to think of things differently. And particularly for somebody who hasn't been in the industry for a long time, they could easily miss that digitally, right? And so there is something about touching and feeling, but you can also look at a pattern, for example, and you can look at it 3D and like you look at it moving and be like, oh, that the way that it drapes is not really what I was intending. The length of that is not really what I wanted. That neckline needs to be adjusted. That those sleeves are not shaped enough, or whatever it is, that you can see that digitally and make those decisions. And so being able to make certain decisions digitally saves a lot of time and cost. But then you ultimately, where is the touch point where I do want a physical? I want physicality, but maybe I don't need everything as physical as I thought I did. And so it's
Yes.
just re-rigging how you're doing what you're doing.
And that's fascinating. I think, Tirsa, I think what you're bringing out in this conversation is that there's an opportunity to really shake up everything in the way people are doing things, right? From sustainability and the benefits to the planet and everything else, to speed and how you do business and just increasing your margins and making a successful business. So, everything is playing into this, and you've got the opportunity to rewire everything, it looks like, right? So that's a fascinating time to be in this industry.
I think it is fascinating. And honestly, I've loved the journey that I've been in, and I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. My first job, we didn't have computers. The only people who had computers at their desk were our accounting department. We had like 3 computers. Everybody else use the phone, telefax machine. Like that's how we communicated with our overseas. We sent them messages and waited for them to come back the next day by fax. It was insane. Fast forward, and I still laugh because it's really funny. I worked with companies who work domestically, and not only domestically, but right in my city, right downstairs. And so I got to see a lot of things firsthand early in the industry. And so if anything hadn't connected based on my educational experience, I literally could see it right there happening, and everything started making sense early for me. So in those regards, I would never give up all of those experiences. I worked in Fortune 500 companies. I worked in small businesses. I worked in one who we were working as part of, we were a division within a larger company, and we took our division away from the company. And when we did that, it was my boss, and I worked out of a suitcase in his house, where literally I'd open the suitcase, work for the day, pack it back up, and come back the next day. I worked in a lot of different environments. And actually that business did fantastic. We took it from a $1 million business to a $10 million business in like 7 months. The trajectory just kept going up. It was actually a really great experience working with him so closely, because he was an industry titan as far as sales went. Like he really knew everybody in the industry and could get things done. And so that was really a great experience. And I loved working closely with him, but it was kind of funny to show up at his house and he's like, oh, I picked up bagels. And he's like walking out, he has wet hair, right? Like that was always kind of weird, but the rest of it was an amazing experience. So fast forward, living in New York for many years, then living in California, it allowed me the opportunity to see the different coasts. I had to learn to slow down when I moved to California, meaning that I had to have patience to let people finish talking. I've loved my journey. I've loved the experience. But fast forward to today, the amount of opportunity to look at the industry and to look at what you're doing is so immense, but it's so necessary. Like yesterday's businesses will not thrive in today's world. Like you have to evolve, right? You have to adopt a lot of the new ways of looking at things. Why not use AI? Why not integrate all of the technology that you can into the processes all across it? Why not, taking all of these separate tools and now being able to have an overarching AI who's going to help you analyze each one of those different components from PLM to everything else that you're doing is really essential to make critical decisions that was not an option just a few years ago. The comfort level of AI is building, but the technology itself is evolving quite rapidly. It's been part of our lives behind the scenes for a long time, but now it's really out in our faces and people can really interact with it in a whole new way.
So you emphasized community sustainability in a lot of your answers, right? For, let's say, a new designer entering the industry, in your opinion, what are the smartest ways to navigate those early steps to make sure they have these core pillars now that they are central across the industry, right? And they're important for a brand to sustain?
I do a lot of I'm very much in a give back community and mentality. And so me personally, I do a lot of things from volunteering in Scouts America to having a really rich internship program and doing a lot of speaking engagements at colleges to help enrich young people as they're coming into the community. I can tell you that the young people coming into the community are so committed to sustainability, so committed. I mean, from within our industry, from without our industry, there are students coming out of the educational system that across the board, across everything we're doing, are studying sustainability and coming out with that as an expectation of something that they're going to do in the world, which honestly warms my heart. That says, no matter what, the younger community is going to continue to make positive changes towards sustainability. And so new businesses that are coming in, I don't know of one that is thinking about sustainability. I haven't met one young person who hasn't talked about it. Even if they're confused and don't make the decisions every day to make all of their choices sustainable, they truly are committed to the thought of sustainability, because the more businesses who are pushing towards sustainability means the more commonplace it's going to be, and the less the non-sustainable options are going to be valued, and therefore they'll go away. And so then one day my dream is that we don't talk about sustainability anymore, because that's the only way we do things.
Right.
We should still continue to talk about circularity for quite a long time because it's going to take a long time for it to really to be part of our culture and our societies. But that's my dream. We don't have to even talk about it because it's all there is. In the meantime, as we're building those pillars, we have to articulate what does sustainability mean to me, because it's a lot of different meanings of sustainability today and a lot of different ways of going towards it. Understanding what is going to resonate with your audience, that's where you need to start when you're building those pillars. And then once you build them, then you need to start building your network that supports those pillars, right? From the beginning of concept all the way through the product, all the way through the end, hopefully end of life of your product, some external personnel or maybe some internal personnel that you bring in, your business partners that you work with, because for sure you're not going to be vertical. You're going to need to buy materials from other people. You're going to need to buy manufacturing from other people. So you need to understand what they're doing and working with people who are genuinely willing for transparency to work with, to be able to tell that story. And then from there, you start telling your marketing story to your consumer so they understand who you are. And here's one tip for brands. Don't wait to start marketing your product until you have it, because that's far too late. You need to pay your bills, which means you need to start the buzz early. You need to start that buzz of like, I have this great product coming early in order to have a client when you're ready to sell. And so that's kind of what they need to do, is like building their pillars and building their values, and building their brand based on it.
Amazing. Tessa, I'm curious. I know that you have shared the story before of you working with a brand. Is there a success story that you're fond of that has come out of Fashion Index? Something that's really stuck with you?
So I think one of my favorite things is when I'm traveling around and I introduce myself to somebody that I haven't met yet, in which I love meeting new people. I try to meet as many new people as I can. This last 6 months, I traveled almost every week, meeting new people and going different places, some of it for fun, but a lot of it for work. And the thing that makes me most excited is when people say, oh, I've heard of you. Oh, I know you. I use your platform. And I was like, oh my God, like that's the most amazing thing. It used to be people, I would see somebody going down the street and they'd be wearing something that I had a hand in bringing to market. And that used to warm me. Now it's like, oh, I know your platform. I love your platform. I use it for sourcing. I found some really great suppliers on there. I loved hearing a bunch of the businesses on our platform, actually meeting other businesses on our platform. And then they're doing podcasts together. They formed an alliance and a relationship. They're two different types of businesses, but they have found a way of working together, both as building a community as well as using each other's services. And that just makes me so excited to know that the community is really coming together and that they're building a stronger industry. And so those are some of my favorite things.
You must be really heartwarming to see that your vision for Fashion Index is, coming true. Love that. Tessa, just a question for young designers. I'm talking about this in terms of the community we have at the F Word. Now, we have global designers they're at different stages of their careers. If they would want to plug into Fashion Index and make the most out of what you've built, where would you suggest they start? Or is there something that you think is really useful for younger designers on Fashion Index?
Well, we really try to speak to the younger designers and understanding the things that you don't know yet. And the questions that you're afraid to ask out loud because you want people, bottom line, you need to know in order to build your foundation. Because if you try to build a pyramid and the bottom has a whole bunch of holes in it, eventually something's going to collapse. And so you really want to build a strong foundation regardless. And so in Fashion Index, we really understand that person coming into the space. And we built a lot of blogs based for the new person coming into the industry. So definitely go in Fashion Index, create an account to be part of the community, because that will plug you into our newsletters that we send. Our newsletters are constantly introducing new businesses at a deeper level, so you can kind of get to know who they are and we also talk about what's happening in the industry. And so all of those things are really great from our newsletter. But then you can go on our blog section and you can learn a lot of the back information in a very casual, informative way, from how to really build a professional level tech pack to, am I ready to make a sample yet? Like, should I be reaching out to a factory? Do I have what I need to be able to actually get a response back? What kind of factory should I be talking to that I do get a response back? Like if I talk to a factory that has minimums of 4,000, 6,000 pieces, and I tell them I'm looking for 50 pieces, I'm not going to get an answer. And when I do talk to them, how should I speak to them? I need to speak to them in a language where they take me seriously. And so all of those sorts of things you can learn at Fashion Index. We also talk about how to build product for certain market spaces. There's a lot of different really fun articles out there. One of our not newest articles, but valuable ones was talking about Web3 and how everything kind of ties in. And how do you wrap your mind around that as a designer? In some ways, it's a little overwhelming. I used to tease myself and say, I really valued my computer nerd friends because I didn't know that much about computers. And I didn't really want to when I was younger, but I really respected my friends who that was their area of passion. I totally understood that it was a valuable place to be in. Fast forward, now I have my own web platform and I deal with Figma and everything else that has to do with a web platform. And I understand and daily talk to full stack developers as we're always improving our platform. Right. And so I've learned so much more about it and I'm immersed in it. And even more than before, I fully respect what they do. I am like in awe of all the things that they can put out and make happen with ones and zeros. I'm just like, Yahoo. Right. But really being able to figure out how to interact in our space is being part of that newsletter, enjoying our blogs. We do a separate newsletter on LinkedIn that's actually more industry thought leaders type stuff, very future, like what's happening and what's currently current and what's now. And then we have all of our social media. So if you're more of a casual observer, maybe not quite ready to start searching suppliers, et cetera, then join our community and social because we'll give you a lot of that information, but in a lighter feed. So in a lighter weight, more fun, more appropriate for that quick bits of information. And so all of those different ways you can interact and kind of start to feel more connected into the industry.
Amazing. That's really insightful. Krishan, do you want to ask any questions before we wrap up?
I'm good. I just want to say thank you so much, Tirsa. It was fantastic having you and having a chat and this very insightful discussion talking about all the different opportunities. And I'm also extremely hopeful that there's the whole grassroots movement to get sustainability going, right? So it looks like there is still hope and we are heading in the right direction. At least we've planted the seeds. So I will say to us, before I close it, I'm going to come and try to find some time and get a coffee with you. You're not more than an hour away, so there is no excuse. But thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure talking to both of you. It's from my late night chats with to today's meeting conversation. It's really fun. I really think that there's a lot of synergy between our businesses. So I'm excited to continue that conversation and having talks like this and trying to share out the industry information that each of us have to offer and how we're all bringing things together, I think is really valuable for the community. And I really do believe we're past just the basic grassroots. I do think we continue to need the grassroots to support us as new innovation and sustainability happens and people really buy into it and support it. But, after talking to some larger industry people in the retail apparel space, it's moving beyond that. The amount of investment from the financial side that's going into sustainability and how much money they're looking to put into sustainability, large businesses who have gotten their boardrooms really on board with sustainability and the understanding that they do need to future-proof themselves and work towards that business model is heartwarming. But we need everybody to continue to use their dollars to support sustainability because that's what's really going to make the difference.
I hope this opens up a bigger understanding of how the ecosystem actually works, right? Because this was a really insightful conversation. And what I've understood is how many possibilities open up when you know where to look and who to connect with. Right place at the right time. And I really appreciate your time, Tirsa. We're way over 45 minutes, but thank you so much for sticking around. And thank you for everything you're building. It's really useful in today's fashion scenario.
Thank
I
you. Thanks so much.
I'm really happy to be able to be part of the community. I personally have a story of where I understand the value of what I want to bring to the apparel world and what I want to leave as my legacy. And so this is part of me building the legacy of really making a difference, really helping the industry to move in a healthy direction that supports the future.